You motherfucking tube. It's your boy, Rollo Jenkins. Want to say happy Thanksgiving to all my fellow boxing fans. The YTBC, happy damn Thanksgiving. Happy holidays to all. Just want to touch on a couple things real quick, man. Obviously, we had the big fight, Cotto Canelo. And, I thought it was a pretty decent fight. Not a barn burner, nothing major, but I thought it was a pretty decent scrap. What I will say is this, though. I'm hearing all this controversy about the scorecards and all of that shit. And this is the thing about boxing and scoring. This is some shit that I've talked about prior videos. And here it goes, popping up again. When we watch a fight, we're looking for, a few things in a fight. You know what I'm saying? You could be looking for the dude who's punching the hardest, landing the cleaner, more effective punches. You could be looking for a dude who does that little slick, pretty shit that you like. Gliding around the ring and all of that shit. And if that's what you like, that's what you like. And that's how you score a fight. But the fact of the matter is this. There is no one size fit all for scoring. There is no one way to judge a fight. There is no absolute way to do it. So no matter how you score a fight, you got to understand that other people don't score fights the same way that you do. There are many fights that I had to go back and look at, and fights that people said was a robbery, or how could it be this way? How could this guy have won? And I'm going to tell you the first fight where I started to go back and look at fights and say, I see why they scored that fight this way. And I've disagreed with a lot of scorecards. But then when I go back and look at it and I say, well, damn, maybe this was the right score. Or not necessarily that they had the right score, but I can see how that fight was scored that way. Lara Paul Williams fight. I see why they gave that fight to Paul Williams. I don't necessarily think that I would have scored the fight the same way, but I see how it could have been scored that way. Canelo Lara. I scored it for Canelo. I don't see what the big deal was, but I understand why people could have scored that fight for Lara. Canelo Mayweather. I could see how somebody could have that fight a draw. A lot of people say that fight was 10-2, 11-1, 9-3. But I can easily see how that fight could have been scored a draw. In boxing, your objective is to break down your opponent. Not to just barely squeak out the round. Not to try and look pretty and hope that you're going to land a pretty flurry, steal the round, shit like that. You are supposed to take 3 minutes of a round and beat the fuck out of your opponent. Anything outside of your ass pretty much getting a 10-8 round, you leave the room for interpretation for your ass to lose the round. And that's just the plain and simple fact. There is no one way to score a round. So if you don't necessarily beat the fuck out of your opponent in a particular round, you leave scoring open for interpretation based on the fact of who's watching the fight. Now, when I scored Cotto Canelo, I had the fight scored, I believe, 9-3 or 10-2 for Canelo. But only 2 of those rounds to me were dominant by Canelo. All the rest of the rounds were pretty damn close. I gave Cotto like round 1 and maybe like round 10 or some shit. Every other round I pretty much gave Canelo. I thought that Canelo did the better work. I thought that he was his fighting and tactics were more intense and more telling than Cotto's. But A lot of those rounds were really close, and I was pretty much splitting hairs. I just like what Canelo was doing better than Cotto. But I could easily see how somebody could have had that fight scored a draw, or maybe even for Cotto. Now I agree with the judges' scorecards. Even the one judge who had Cotto only winning one round, because even the 2 rounds that I scored for Cotto weren't rounds that he was dominant in. He didn't beat the fuck out of Canelo in that round, and you could easily make a case for Canelo in all of the rounds in that fight, every single round. You could make a case for him. So there was no dominant round except for maybe 2 by Canelo in the whole fight. So I know that everybody is arguing and mad about the scoring and talking shit about it, but the fact of the matter is this. You get 3 minutes with a break in between to beat the fuck out of a dude. And if you're doing anything outside of beating his brains out, you leave room for interpretation. You leave room for the fight to be interpreted in a way that may not be favorable to yourself. Even in the Triple G Lemieux fight, I don't think that it was as lopsided as the commentators and shit wanted to make it seem, but I thought some of those rounds were good rounds that you could have made a case for Lemieux in. But most people seem to think that Lemieux didn't have a fucking moment in the whole fight. I thought you could have easily given Lemieux 1 or 2 rounds, maybe even 3 rounds in that fight. You could have made a case for it. I put it that way. I'm not saying that I would have necessarily scored him, but there are rounds where somebody was just looking to get him the benefit of the doubt, could have made a case for him. So when it comes to scoring, first and foremost, scoring in boxing is a flawed system anyway. That's why you have guys that fight in a certain style and manner will do just enough to win a round, and what they do is they stay out of harm's way. They might land a punch or 2, and then they spend the next 30 seconds just staying the fuck out the way. Some people call that shit smart, strategic, and all of that. I think that's some weak ass shit, but I mean, if that gets you the victory, it gets you the victory. I mean, for some motherfuckers, it done worked at least 49 times for them. So, I mean, it is what it is. You got other guys who hit and hold, and you know what I'm saying. So, it's all based on interpretation, man. If you don't go out there and knock your guy the fuck out like some guys do, like we don't argue about the scorecards with Triple G and David Lemieux, or Triple G and Monroe, goddamn Kovalev and Pascal. Nobody was talking about no scorecards in those fights, man. Because both guys set out to do the same thing. They wanted to knock the other motherfucker the fuck out. Won't worry about no scorecards. Motherfuckers running around the ring trying to pity pat their way to victory, man. Sometimes that shit ain't gonna work, man. So, bottom line, and in conclusion, I just want to say, whenever you score a fight, however you score a fight, however you feel that a fight should be scored, you got to go back and watch that fight again and just reinterpret the way you score fights, because you got to understand that everybody don't score fights the way you do. So the way I look at it is, I watch a fight 3 times, and sometimes I do it all in watching it once. Let's say in the Cotto Canelo instance, I say if I'm a diehard Cotto fan and I put money on Cotto, could I get this round to Cotto? If I'm a hardcore diehard Canelo fan, could I get this round to Canelo? Could I rationalize giving this round to this dude? And then I try and be as fair and unbiased as possible. So, in that, a lot of times I see that, oh shit, that round wasn't as lopsided, or it wasn't as one way as the commentators made it seem. And like I said at the beginning of this video, the first time I tried to get a grasp on that and understand it for real was when I went back and I watched Paul Williams versus Eslandi Lara. And I'm like, the way these commentators made it seem like Paul Williams didn't land a fucking punch the whole fight. But a lot of instances where you thought that Lara was doing something, or he was stunning or hurting Williams, in some instances it was just the other way around. But the way that it played out and the way that the action went and flowed, you may have missed it being a casual observer. Sometimes, and only fights that you've been to and been able to go home and watch on TV later, could you understand this? Sometimes when you at a fight, you hear punches, you hear shit in the ring that sways your judging more so than what you see on TV. Like on TV, you can't really hear punches. When you at a fight, a lot of times you can hear punches. Even when you far away, you can hear that shit. And the way the fight looked on TV, it looked like you probably could hear all of Canelo's punches and none of Cotto's punches. And that might have been one of the biggest reasons that the fight cards were so lopsided in the favor of Canelo. Y'all just, man, look, man. We keep trying to, and I'm going to say this in this video. In life, in all of humanity, there are three things that human beings can communicate with one another, regardless of any type of barrier that you can put in between these two individuals. Language, sometimes senses such as seeing or being able to hear, old, young, you could go anywhere on the planet. Anywhere on the planet. I'm talking about you can go into a motherfucking jungle where they don't have cars or running water, and you can tell somebody that you want something to eat. You could tell somebody that you want to fuck, and you could tell somebody that you want to fight. And in that fight, it don't take no genius. We don't both have to speak English. We don't have to be around the same age, height, weight, race, religion to know who the fuck getting their ass whooped and who's not. And a lot of the times in these fights, the motherfuckers ain't fighting, and it make it hard to decipher who the fuck really winning the fight. It's hard to know who the fuck getting their ass whooped if two niggas in the ring ain't fighting. If two motherfuckers get in there and just fight, you can easily decipher. You have more information to make up who the fuck you think is winning and losing. When dudes get in there and they ain't fighting, it makes it that much harder to figure out and decide who's winning and losing. It's your boy, Rollo Jenkins. Holla at your boy.